A political bombshell that could reshape Hollywood, a beloved family returns to the big screen after 20 years, and African cinema claims the film global spotlight. We are covering the stories with the power to change what you watch and where it's made. Welcome to the Film Mandate. And in today's episode, President Trump threatens to impose the 100% tariffs on non-US made films, and the Simpsons movie sequel has been announced for summer 2027. And also, we'll be looking at the top 10 African films that are most watched on the Netflix platform. We are covering all these stories and more right here on the Film Mandate. My name is Papa Otu. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome back to the Film Mandate, where I bring to you movie news, reviews, and reactions, both from the African front and the international scene. And thanks for joining me for this episode of the Film Mandate. So we'll be delving into the very first story. This story has blown out all over the internet because it is quite a crucial story to how the film landscape would take shape should it be actually implemented. And this has to do with President Donald Trump's renewed threat, or however way it's phrased, intention to actually impose 100% tariffs on all non-made U.S. films. And for those who have been following this particular news for a while, you definitely know that this is not the first time he's brought up this particular issue. Somewhere in May, or even perhaps earlier on, President Donald Trump did bring up the issue of imposing 100% tariffs on all non-made US, non-US made films. And as to the very parameters of which this covers, well, it is yet to be clearly revealed. But what we know is that this has to do with trying to keep American films made on US soil, to be quite specific, and also would affect films that sort of wants to screen or have a share in the US market, film market, to be specific. However, this just yesterday, news broke with regards to Trump renewing his threat of imposing this 100% tariff. And let's cover this story, which has been captured on the BBC website. And this is what it has to say: that Trump renews threat to impose 100% tariffs on non-US made films. And it says that Donald Trump has repeated his threat to impose 100% tariffs on all films not made in the US, claiming the American industry had been stolen by other countries. He said on Monday that California had been heavily affected and the levy would solve this long-time, never-ending problem. In May, the US president said he would talk to Hollywood executives about his plan and to begin the process of imposing the levy because America's film industry was dying a very fast death. Trump's remarks come as he announced a new wave of tariffs last week, including a 100% levy on branded or patented drug imports, as well as 50% levies on kitchen and bathroom cabinets. Trump said on his Truth Social platform, "Our movie-making business has been stolen from the United States of America by other countries, just like stealing candy from a baby. California, with its weak and incompetent governor, has been particularly hard hit." He said the 100% tariff would be imposed on any and all movies that are made outside of the United States. Trump did not say when the tariff will come into force. The White House has been approached for a comment. It was also unclear if the tariffs would apply to you or to films on streaming services such as Netflix, as well as those shown at cinemas, or how they would be calculated. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce said it was deeply concerned by the levy because American production houses relied on Canadian facilities, crews, and talent to deliver Hollywood movies. Catherine Fortin Lefevre, Senior Vice President of International Policy and Global Partnerships for the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, said these tariffs risk punishing U.S. studios for filming in Canada by driving up costs, stifling investment, and undermining the competitive advantage our countries have built together. She said the tariff would weaken both economies and jeopardize thousands of middle-class jobs. Dan Coatsworth, investment analyst at AJ Bell, questioned how such a tax would work given tariffs are typically imposed on goods, and said many filmmakers were choosing to shoot films in other countries because of better incentives. The threat of 100% tariffs on movies made outside of the US raises more questions than it does answers, he said. Filmmakers have been progressively lured by tax incentives that come from shooting movies in other parts of the world, and the Los Angeles film industry has lost its glitz and glamour. Mr. Coatsworth said it would be difficult to define an American-made movie if a film were to be shot in the US but have foreign actors, directors, or funding. So it's hard to understand just how Trump intends to impose the levy, he said. Theoretically, being forced to produce movies in the US could push up their costs. Content makers would pass on this cost to the customer, and that could hurt demand for streaming companies and cinema operators. He said investors did not appear to see this as a serious threat at present. Stocks for companies such as Netflix and Disney dipped briefly, then bounced back. So several recent major films produced by US studios were shot outside of America, including Deadpool and Wolverine, Wicked, and Gladiator 2. The US remains a major film production hub globally, despite challenges, according to movie industry research from firm ProdPro. Its annual report showed the country saw 14.54 billion of production spending last year, but that was down by 26% since 2022. Countries that have attracted an increase in spending since 2022 include Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the UK. The BBC understands the UK government is waiting for the details of the US tariff and how it will impact the British film industry. A spokesperson for the Department for Business and Trade said the UK film industry employs millions of people and generates billions for our economy. Separately, on Monday, the president announced 10% tariffs on imports of softwood, timber, lumber, as well as 25 levies on kitchen cabinets, vanities, and upholstered wooden furniture. Trump had hinted at a proposal earlier in the day in a Truth Social post, saying substantial tariffs on any country that does not make its furniture in the United States. Details to follow, he added. The tariffs will apply from 14th October, with some of the levies set to increase sharply next year for countries that fail to reach an agreement with the US, according to a proclamation signed by the president. It came after Trump announced a new wave of tariffs last week, including 100% on branded or patented drug imports unless a company is building a factory in the US. So this is actually the new development with regards to the renewed threat on imposing 100% levies on the films made outside the US or non-US made films. And this indeed is sparking or will spark a lot of conversations, clearly due to the ramifications this would have should it be implemented. Because in the world over, a lot of these US made films are actually made in countries, just as the article has already said, they are made in countries that have better incentives for Hollywood films or American films in general. And even within America itself, it looks like some of the states have been able to lure films being made in Hollywood, particularly to other, states that offer better incentives, be it tax or other form of incentives that makes production more attractive in those states compared to the US itself. So this indeed has a lot of, would have a lot of people talking. And looking at the countries like UK, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, who are perhaps one of the most, or are the top allies, country allies to a lot of Hollywood productions or American films, that would indeed impact the economy with regards to how much they're able to generate from the film industry as a result of attracting these foreign productions into their country. Quite recently, a story broke where the UK government sort of reimbursed Marvel with about $2.1 billion out of like a tax rebate out of shooting in the UK for over a period of 15 years. So clearly, it looks like these countries are offering such incentives that particularly US are not able to offer. Let's say, to be specific, California. And I'm sure it is quite worrying. And I can understand why perhaps President Trump and his administration would want to do this. But in general terms, I think it's a matter of how better the incentives these countries are offering compared to what perhaps California and some other states are offering. And I think quite recently this year as well, I read an article where the governor of California and the film commission there is trying to also provide a highly competitive, film incentives to keep films to be made in Hollywood, to be specific. So honestly, as it stands now, there's going to be a challenge should it be implemented. And I think one of the countries that will be highly impacted is Canada, since a lot of films are made in Canada, with regard not just films but television as well. So that would indeed change the entire landscape completely altogether. And I'm sure as he has renewed his threat, that is, President Donald Trump renewed his threat to impose these tariffs, so will other nations would want to do same to leverage the field for them. And I think one of such countries that would want to do such is China, to be specific. And clearly, we do not know the entire parameters that this tariff covers. But obviously, it has to do with films that are not shot in the US. I don't know whether it has to do with all films that are not shot in the US or particularly US films that are not US films that are not being shot in the US but shot in foreign territories. Obviously, if that is the case, it would also imply that if a foreign film is shot outside the US but seeking, to have a rights to the territorial rights to the American market, that would be affected as well. And this obviously across board would shoot up production costs, which are in most cases are already high enough, and therefore would sort of double it as a result of this 100% tariff. So it remains to be seen if perhaps it's implemented, how it's going to change the entire landscape altogether. Besides, I can understand a lot of companies seeking to beat down their production costs if they realize that certain places that they would have loved to shoot is far higher than other countries that are far cheaper. So it's really going to cost a lot of, a change in the film landscape. And I think clearly too, perhaps one of the things that maybe Donald Trump and his team might not perhaps take into consideration is also the very fact that it may also affect a lot of the box office returns. One of the incidents that I think maybe most people may not realize is that majority of the box office returns is actually acquired outside the North American office as against what they have in their country. And yes, rightfully so, I'm sure a lot of American films are able to break even from just the domestic box office returns without necessarily relying on the external box office. But as it stands now, a lot of the studios now heavily also count heavily on the box office returns from foreign territories, and rightfully so, because it then helps, not just to break even but make decent profits on the property that they put out there. One of such clear example is Avatar, the Avatar movie released in 2009, and that is the highest grossing movie of all time. And the highest grossing movie of all time, if you check on at the on in the box office mojo, website, it's 2,923,710,708 dollars. And out of this particular amount that Avatar made, about 27% of the box office was just made in the US, which amounts to 785,221, 785,221,649, which I think perhaps made the Avatar movie break even, rightfully so. But majority of the profit was made outside US, and you're talking about um, is it 73%? And the 73% of the box office was amounts to 2,138,484,377 dollars. So it shows how much the international box office is also of benefit to US. So with this in mind, if just as earlier this year when Donald Trump first brought up the 100% tariff, it did point to a fact that China also wanted to fight back against this particular tariff, and China is more than willing to go boot for boot against what Donald Trump wants to do with regards to this particular tariff. And the reason why I bring in China is the fact that for Avatar in particular, China contributed the most of all the international territories. China's box office returns for Avatar was the biggest of all. And it is, let me check, China's contribution to Avatar alone was 262,125,748. So imagine that if this particular 100% tariff by Donald Trump is imposed, China will definitely fight back. Even quite recently, they did say that they are reducing the number of US films that enter into their market. And I'm sure it wouldn't augur well for anybody. Definitely, there must be some form of compromise or agreement one way or the other. But I think what the US market can do for itself is to actually provide better incentives that can rival that of the UK, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia, so that majority of their films can be shot, in America. As it stands now, obviously, I think a lot of American films are quite on the high side in terms of cost. So that is what leads a lot of these production companies to resort to shoot outside the US. So this indeed is quite a challenge, and for most of us, we are hoping that this will not be the case. I can understand what the leadership of America, the America's government, will want to do, but in the long run, the question is, would it help even America as a whole? Is it going to help them? And if it doesn't, well, we are yet to see how it's going to end up being. But whatever your thoughts may be, I think it is an ongoing dialogue we all have to have. And regardless of whether America is able to break even just with their box office alone or not, is really going to affect everyone. So let me know what you think with regards to this particular development. Do you think this will be better for America to have this imposed, or better have the states also bring up incentives that will rival those countries that are attracting a lot of American productions to be shot in there? Whatever your thoughts may be, kindly leave it in the comment section below. And before we move on to the next story, the Oscars seems to be high on the heels recently with a lot of foreign, a lot of countries outside, US, who is the organizer of Oscar, sending in their best international feature films. And well, China has joined the race by submitting its film to the Oscars. And let's take a brief read as to what film it is. And the film is Dead to Rights. And this has been captured in the Hollywood Reporter. And it says that China picks Nanjing Massacre film Dead to Rights as Best International Feature Film Submission. The summer blockbuster, directed by Shen Ao and starring Liu Haoran, dramatizes the horrors of the Nanjing massacre and has earned over $417 million at China's box office. And this is what it says, that China has selected Dead to Rights, a harrowing historical drama set amid the 1937 Nanjing massacre, as its official contender for the 98 Academy Awards Best International Feature Film category. Directed by Shen Ao, from a script he co-wrote with Xu Luyan and Zhang Ke. Dead to Rights centers on a humble postman, Chan, played by Liu Haoran, who assumes the identity of a photo developer within a Japanese-controlled studio. He covertly hides civilians and Chinese soldiers while duplicating photographic evidence of atrocities. Operating under daily threat and surveillance, the studio becomes a crucible of moral sacrifice, artistic resistance, and survival. It goes on to say that the pick underscores China's steady shift over the past decade of submitting large-scale historical narratives with potent national symbolism instead of the art house human dramas that more regularly win the country's filmmakers acclaim overseas. Released in July 25th, Dead to Rights was an instant commercial hit in China, breaking a long blockbuster dry spell that extended through the spring. The film earned $57.2 million in its first weekend, and it continued to perform powerfully throughout the summer. Its total haul currently stands at $417.6 million. The film is backed by the state-backed China Film Group and Omnijoy Media, among others. So there you have it. That is China's pick for the Oscars, and it looks like this indeed is something they are hoping they can use to, break into, to be nominated and possibly win for the Oscars. And it's quite interesting. Just yesterday or 2 days ago, or I think prior to the weekend, Lebanon also entered their film into the Oscar race, and so many other films have actually been submitting, so many other countries instead have been submitting their films for the best international feature category. And for China in particular, their first attempt to submit a film for the Oscars was in 1979. And that was when they submitted. And since that time, till now, they've submitted 39 films to the best international feature category. I think it's formally known as the best foreign language or of the Oscar race, and only 2 films of theirs have received nominations, has entered into the shortlisted nominations for the best international, feature, and it is Ju Du in 1990 and also Hero in 2002, which I think starred Jet Li. But these 2 films are all by one filmmaker, and that is Zhang Yimou. Zhang Yimou. But so far, China has not won an Oscar yet, but I'm sure they are hoping that this time around, they would be able to nab the Oscar for the best international feature category. Whatever your thoughts may be, kindly leave it in the comment section below. And this has been the the Oscar Minute, a newly created segment I've created for this platform. So let me know your thoughts about this particular one, and it would be very much appreciated. So moving on from this story to the next one, well, one of perhaps America's beloved family, which has been, I mean, on air for as long as you can ever imagine, is The Simpsons. And after almost 20 years, The Simpsons is receiving a comeback to the big screen, breaking away a little bit from the TV screen. Is The Simpsons coming back onto the TV screen in summer of 2027. And that is quite an exciting development, seeing that the very first time it was released in 2007, is it? Yeah, in 2007, it did nab an amount, I mean, a very ridiculous, huge amount of money, and that is quite interesting. So let's take a brief read as to this particular story, which is captured in the ABC News. And this is what it says, that the Simpsons movie sequel coming to theaters in summer of 2007. It says that the Simpsons are going for, sorry
Everybody's favorite yellow animated.
Sorry about that. So yeah, so the Simpsons are going for double duty on the big screen. It was announced on Monday that 20th Century Studios will bring a new film based on the animated family to movie theaters in 2027. Woohoo! The Simpsons are coming to theaters with an all-new movie on July 23rd, 2027. The Instagram post captioned reads, and this is the Instagram post: Homer's coming back for seconds, and in theaters, 23rd July 2027. So that is quite exciting, especially for all the diehard fans of The Simpsons. So that is quite an interesting development. And, this particular franchise is one of the most successful, animated franchise of all time and has been in existence for as long as I can remember. Let me cross check how many years. So it's in its 37th series on TV at the moment. It's 37th series on TV at the moment. And not only that, it first premiered on the Fox network in 1989, December of 1989. So it's really been there for as long as possible. So it's currently in its 37th season. And when it debuted in the cinemas of July 2007, it made a whopping amount of $536 million. And that is really crazy. Back then, it made so much money. So obviously, it's great that it's returning this time around. But the first film was directed by David Silverman. I don't know whether David Silverman. And it is quite amazing. Seeing that Disney has acquired this property, they actually have slated this film for a slot that was previously meant for an untitled Marvel film. So obviously, this being one of their properties, it is of no surprise that they have, given this spot for the Simpsons, which is to debut in 2027 summer, July 23rd. So that is quite interesting. And this particular, franchise of a film of a film or property has been quite prophetic in a certain sense, where it was able to predict real life events, even though perhaps that's not what it intended it to be, but for some reason this is where life itself actually imitates cinema rather than cinema imitating life. And that is quite fascinating and interesting. Well, to have this come back onto the big screen is a big deal, seeing that animated films, of late are making it big, on the big screen. Inside Out 2 was able to break, the box office, result with quite some huge amounts of money. And already it being a beloved character and a beloved series, and is currently on air. The latest release just 28 September. The 37th season release just 28 September. So obviously, I'm sure they are having a good run looking at the ratings and all. So it's of no surprise that Disney, the parent company of 20th Century, would want to put it into the cinemas again. I think it's just perfect to have it released almost, I think, 20 years after the first one was released is perhaps the perfect time to release it again on the big screen. And I'm sure this season, this particular film, the sequel, will also make a big splash in the cinemas when it is released. Honestly, I am interested in seeing what they have to offer this time around, looking at all the current um, events that are happening in the world over. I'm sure they're going to depict some of these issues or some of these events on screen and also perhaps try to be a little prophetic as to what may possibly happen in the future. So I'm indeed excited about this particular, development, and I think returning will be the voice cast, which will include Dan Castellaneta as Homer Simpson, Julie Kavner as Marge, Nancy Cartwright as Bart, and Yeardley Smith as Lisa. So these beloved voice talents would also be returning, and that is quite exciting. Well, I know you are excited about this particular film. Whatever your thoughts may be, I'll be glad if you leave your comments in the comment section below, and it will be very much appreciated. Yeah, so moving on from that to the very last story is African films grabbing or claiming the global spotlight on the Netflix platform. Well, in as much as Netflix has sort of withdrawn from the African continent, mostly the larger part of the African continent, apart from South Africa, but also keep some few properties being developed from the country where they went to set up shop in Nigeria. It still has a number of films making it big on the platform. And I thought I would take this opportunity to enumerate a number of them from the website that has compiled all these properties. So let's go straight to the website, a Nigerian website that is the Nation. The Nation. It covers the top 10 most watched African Netflix movies right now. And so let's start with the very first one. And the very first one is it Twiscoms, which is a South African film. It is a South African movie produced in South Africa, and it has a total watched potential of 45.3 million watched hours. That is quite amazing. 45.3 million watched hours. And this is a 2024 South African drama television series created and written by Louise Pretorius and Albert Sneeman for Netflix. The show was produced by Infinity Films and premiered on September 20th, 2024, with 7 episodes, and yet it's been able to garner 45.3 million watch hours. That is quite amazing. The series stars Amalia Eus, or S, pardon me, and Amanda Owamp. I hope I got the name right. Right. So it charts their initial rocky flower shop in So it charts their initial rocky working relationship at a flower shop in Wilderness. Actress Michelle Bolt passed away during the post-production of the first season. That is indeed sad, but well, it is indeed great to see that a film of this nature has received such attention from a lot of fans of Netflix. The second is Unseen, which is also another South African production, and it has garnered 28.5 million watch hours, which is almost half of the first one. So it is also it's actually a 2023 South African crime drama television series created by Travis Stout and Darine Joshua. The series is a South African adaptation based on Fatma a 2021 Turkish drama series. So breaking the streak is Baby Farm, which is a Nigerian production, which has garnered 9.6 watch hours, which is I think even far a little lesser than half of the second one. And it is a Nigerian series directed by Walter Taylor and Kayode Kasum and produced by Mo Abudu. So the limited series was released on Netflix on the 21st of March 2025. So just this year. Just this year. So perhaps it has some still mileage to go, maybe even overtake that of South Africans, the first two films produced in South Africa. The fourth is King of Joburg, which is also a South African film. South Africa obviously is dominating this chart, and it has 13.7 million watch hours. And this is the Masser brothers rule Johannesburg criminal underworld, but a supernatural family curse threatens to destroy them. So yeah, this is the fourth. Quickly, let's go through. Go is also a South African film with 8.9 million watch hours. And it's about a story about a young runner given a second chance at life when he's offered a track scholarship. But can he chase his dreams without tripping on his lies? The fifth one, as usual, is actually a South African production, again titled Salvage Beauty. And it has a total of 8.9 million watch hours. Let's quickly go through Fatal Seduction. It's also another South African production with 6 million watch hours. The eighth is Blood Legacy, another South African production, which has 5.8 million watch hours. The ninth, Blood and Water, South African, with 3.3 million watch hours. And the last, but not the least, is also Blood Sister, a Nigerian production with 2 million watch hours. And I'm sure a lot of you watching me now are wondering why only two countries occupying this particular list. Obviously, it is so because the only films that Netflix curates now, or perhaps most films that Netflix curates now, are both South African and Nigerian films. And now, South African films or productions are dominating the list because they sort of, they are more or less in business with South Africa due to the number of subscribers of the platform being based in South Africa. So in Africa, Netflix has the highest number of subscriptions in South Africa, and I think the second is Nigeria. And that is actually the case as it is now. And so they sort of curate their films mostly for their platforms from these two major countries. And rarely or barely do you have any other films coming from any other African countries as well. So that is why the list has just Nigeria and South African films mostly being watched. Hopefully, when things get better, when they expand their tentacles to reach out to other countries for content, regardless of the subscriptions, maybe the list will change. But so far, it looks like they only have majority of South African films, then followed by Nigerian films. And unfortunately, I would have hoped that things would have, changed otherwise. But all this is as a result of the fact that majority of their market share is in these two countries, and understandably so, they would want to have a place where majority of the people, select films from countries where majority of the people actually watch their production. So it's understandable that they will go for these films. And one of the driving forces that enables them to choose these films as a result of their production quality, obviously, and also compelling local stories with universal appeals. And it looks like these countries offer them what they want, and that is why they are investing in these African content. So the success of this film highlights some of the diversifying global media landscape. And we are hoping that with time, they would be more receptive of other countries as well, in as much as they may not be, the countries that subscribes highly to their services. I'm sure there will be content from other countries as well that would appeal even to their audiences much more than they think. But gratefully, we are so happy that South Africa and Nigeria still have a stake in this, streaming giants platform, keeping Africa still in the conversation of the global film landscape. So I don't know. Let me know what you think with regards to this development. Do you have you watched any of these films on those platform on this list of top 10? And if you have, kindly put a title in the comment section below. And what's your thoughts on the fact that it's only South Africa and Nigeria that can be found in the top 10? So whatever your thoughts may be, I'll really appreciate it if you leave your thoughts in the comment section below. So this wraps up my last story for today's episode of the Film Mandate. Thanks so much for joining me for this episode. I appreciate your attention and your, viewership and your thoughts. And I'll come your way again with another exciting episode with stories from all over the globe, particularly from the international scene and the African continent for your enjoyment. I'll come your way again tomorrow, same time, with interesting stories as well. And this is the Film Mandate. My name is Papa Otu. I will see you soon.